On July 24th, 2026, as in yesterday, if you're watching this on the day it goes live, Donald Trump stood in front of the cameras at the White House Correspondents' Dinner event coverage and told the world that Iran, in his words, no longer has Navy and Air Force capabilities, and that Iran has, quote, very few drones left, despite what you see. That's according to CNN's live reporting of the president's remarks. Hold on to that sentence. I want you to hold on to it for the next 20 minutes, because in that very same 24-hour window, the New York Times reported that the White House had shelved plans for a broader military campaign against Iran. And the reason given was not diplomatic patience. The reason given was, quote, dwindling U.S. air defense supplies in the Middle East. Both of these things are on the record. They coexist in the same news cycle, and yet they cannot both be operationally true. If Iran has been reduced to a hollow shell with no Navy, no Air Force, and almost no drones, then why is the world's most expensive military pausing an offensive campaign? Because it is running out of the equipment it uses to defend itself. Something in this picture is a lie. And today, we are going to figure out which one. Right now, CNN is asking whether the ceasefire will hold. Fox is asking whether Trump was tough enough or too tough. The BBC is asking whether Netanyahu's Tuesday White House visit will change the diplomatic calculus. Al Jazeera is asking who blinks first. Those are not wrong questions. They're just the surface of the surface. They are the questions you ask when you assume the war is being decided at the negotiating table, at the press conference, and in the speeches. They are the questions you ask when you assume the balance of power is roughly what the front page says it is. The right question, the one nobody at those networks is asking on air, is this. If Iran is broken, what exactly is running out on the American side? Because you do not pause a bombing campaign because you have too many bombs. You pause it because something in the toolkit is empty and you do not want the adversary to notice you noticing. And there is a deeper right question underneath that one. If a country's military is truly hollow, no fleet, no air force, almost no drones, what leverage does that country have that could possibly force the strongest military in human history to slow down? The answer, when you follow the evidence, is a single technical fact hiding in plain sight. A vulnerability that has been sitting inside America's missile defense architecture for 20 years, that Congress has been briefed on, that the Pentagon has known about, and that the wider public has never had explained to it clearly. In the next 20 minutes, we are going to look at what that vulnerability is, how a drone Iran took from America 15 years ago is now the master key that exploits it, and why one very quiet third player, a country that has not fired a single shot in this war, is the actor who benefits most from what is happening this week. I want to introduce a lens for this conversation. Let us call it the Sentinel paradox. Here it is in one sentence. Modern missile defense is a chain of very expensive systems that all depend at the end of the chain on a single set of eyes. The eyes see, the interceptors kill, the commanders decide. But if you blind the eyes, the interceptors are useless and the commanders are guessing. The eyes are the sentinel. And in the American system, the sentinel is very often a single radar. That is the vulnerability. And here's the paradox part. The very technology America invented to sneak past enemy sentinels, the stealth drone, the low observable aircraft, the small radar cross-section platform, is the same technology that when captured or cloned by the enemy becomes the perfect weapon to slip past its own sentinels and destroy them. The knife you designed to cut the other man's rope becomes the knife he cuts yours with. Okay, let me anchor this in something older than any of us. In 1453, the city of Constantinople had stood behind its walls for 1,100 years. 1,100 years. Not 11, not 110, 1,100. Every siege had failed. The walls were the marvel of the medieval world. And yet Constantinople fell in a single morning because of a small side historians called the Kirka Porta that appears to have been left unlocked or unnoticed during the chaos of the assault. Ottoman soldiers slipped through this one small opening. They raised their flag on the inner wall. The defenders on the main walls looked back saw the enemy already inside, and panic did the rest. The lesson is not that the walls of Constantinople were weak. The lesson is that a system with one point of failure, no matter how strong every other part, can be undone by a small strike delivered exactly there. The military theorist Karl von Clausewitz would later call this the Schwarp, the center of gravity, the place where if you strike hard enough, the whole architecture collapses. Modern American missile defense has a Schwarpunk. In the case of the Terminal High Altitude Area Defense System, THAAD, the flagship platform America uses to intercept ballistic missiles in their terminal phase. The Schwarpunk is a radar called the ENTPI-2. It is manufactured by Raytheon. According to the 2025 Missile Defense Agency budget cited by CNN in March, one unit costs just shy of $500 million. $500 million, not 50 million, $500 million. It sits across 5 40-foot trailers. And here's the critical technical fact. Unlike Russian air defense systems, such as the S-400, which deploy multiple complementary radar types, sometimes as many as half a dozen, a THAAD battery relies on this one radar, just one. Without the ANTPI-2, a THAAD battery cannot independently search for or track incoming targets. It is deaf and blind. The interceptors sit in their launchers waiting for a signal that will never come. Does that make sense? One radar, one sentinel, one point of failure. Now, think about how you attack a Schwarpunk. You do not need a large force. You do not need overwhelming firepower. You need a small, precise, low observable strike delivered exactly at that point. You need something too small to see clearly, too slow to trigger the big radars, too cheap to justify expensive counterfire. You need, in other words, a stealth drone, a small, slow, cheap sentinel killer, something like the ARC 170, Sentinel, or its Iranian clone. And that is where the paradox begins. There are 5 pieces of evidence I want to walk through in order. Every one of them is on the record, sourced, and independently verifiable. And by the end, I think the Sentinel paradox will read less as a theory and more as an autopsy of what has already happened. Number 1, the origin of the Iranian stealth drone family. On December 4th, 2011, 15 years ago now, 15 years, not 5, 15, an American Rai 170 Sentinel stealth drone came down near the Iranian city of Kashmir, roughly 140 miles from the Afghan border. The exact cause is still disputed. American officials called it a malfunction. An Iranian engineer told the Christian Science Monitor at the time that Iranian electronic warfare units spoofed the drone satellite navigation link and tricked it into landing on Iranian soil while its autopilot believed it was returning to its base in Afghanistan. Whichever version you believe, one fact is uncontested. Iran got the drone substantially intact. The BBC reported at the time that Irq Aerospace Force Commander Amir Ali Hajizad claimed Iran had broken the drone's encryption codes and begun reverse engineering the airframe. American officials publicly dismissed the claim as bluster. By 2014, Iran had publicly displayed a domestically produced flying wing drone next to the captured original. From that platform, Iran developed a family of stealth-configured aircraft, the Shahed 171 Samor, the Shahed 191. These are the direct descendants of America's own Sentinel. And when CENTCOM released video on April 2nd, 2026, of a US MQ-9 Reaper destroying an Iranian Rai 170 clone on the ground, that clone was in appearance and mission profile, a mirror of the American original bloodline traceable, public record. This is not conspiracy. This is Wikipedia. And the deeper point is this. You cannot unteach an enemy how to build stealth once they have held a stealth aircraft in their hands. It is like trying to untee a locksmith who has spent 3 years disassembling your lock. Number 2, the single radar architecture. As of 2026, the United States Army fields exactly 8 systems in the entire world. 8. Not 80, not 800, 8. Every one of them depends on the A, TPI-2. The high-intensity combat test of THAAD came in June of 2025, during the 12-day Israel-Iran conflict. According to open-source reporting from Military Watch magazine, drawing on Missile Defense Agency data, the U.S. Army expended over 150 AD interceptors during that 12-day window. Each interceptor costs approximately $15.5 million. That is a defensive expenditure over 11 days of Israeli airspace protection, conservatively estimated at over $235 billion. And more importantly than the dollar figure, that burn rate consumed over 25% of the total global ED interceptor arsenal. 25%. In 12 days, if someone punches you in the face and you spend a quarter of your entire lifetime supply of ammunition punching back, you cannot afford to be punched next month. Okay, compare the architecture to Russia's S-400 for a moment. The S-400 deploys multiple radar types: long-range acquisition, engagement, low altitude, sometimes half a dozen sensors per battery, blindfold a man with 2 eyes and he stumbles, blindfold a man with 1 eye and he is helpless. The ANP-2 is the 1 eye. Number 3, the March 2026 imagery. When the wider war broke open on February 28, 2026, with Operation Roaring Lion and Operation Epic Fury, Iran launched what it called Operation True Promise for the 4. This was a coordinated regional strike against U.S. and allied installations across the Gulf. The critical moment from an analytical standpoint came in the first 4 days. According to CNN's satellite imagery investigation published on March 5, 2026, a THAAD and TPI-2 radar at the Muwafaq Salti Air Base in Jordan, over 500 miles from Iranian soil, was destroyed. The satellite image taken March 2nd showed a blackened, a TPI-2 with debris scattered around it. 2 13-foot craters in the sand suggested more than one attempt had been needed to hit the target, which itself is significant because it means Iran was willing to expend redundant munitions to guarantee the kill. All 5 of the radar's 40-foot trailers appear destroyed or seriously damaged. On March 3rd, a second radar, an AN, FPS 132 Block 5 early warning system near Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar. A radar that feeds targeting data forward to THAAD batteries in Israel and Jordan was struck. $500 million of American radar equipment killed by drones and missiles that in the aggregate cost less than that interceptor. Let that sit for a moment. And now think about the Strait of Hormuz, the choke point through which 20% of the world's oil flows. The radars destroyed in Jordan and Qatar were part of the sensor architecture defending that choke point. Blinding them did not require Iranian ships, it required drones, cheap drones, descendants of the Sentinel. Number 4, the cost ratio. This is a number that keeps American defense planners awake at night. An Iranian Shahed 136 loitering munition costs somewhere between $20,000 and $50,000 to manufacture. According to open source estimates cited by CSS analysts in CNBC's March 2026 reporting, a Patriot PAC-3 interceptor, the workhorse system used to shoot down drones and cruise missiles, costs approximately $4 million per shot. Cost ratio per analysis, compiled by defense budget researchers, somewhere between 80-1 and 200-1 in the attacker's favor. Some open source analyses put the PAC-3 versus Shahed ratio at 120-1. A THAAD interceptor at $15.5 million against a Shade at $30,000 is a $500 to 1 ratio. Think of it like this. Imagine you own a candy store. Every time a shoplifter steals a candy bar, you have to burn a Rolex watch to catch them. Now imagine the shoplifter can send you 100 shoplifters an hour. That is what asymmetric drone warfare does to a layered missile defense budget. This is not hypothetical. According to Fox News reporting in March 2026, Ukrainian firms are now offering drone-based interceptors that cost $1,400 apiece to shoot down Shads. A tacit admission from the field that the traditional interceptor economics are broken. Not stressed, broken. Number 5, the stockpile math. That interceptor production per publicly available Missile Defense Agency budget documents runs at roughly 96 interceptors per year. 986. Not 960, 96. That is the entire annual American replenishment capacity for the interceptor that defends against the highest tier ballistic threats. 12 days of high-intensity conflict in June 2025 consumed over 150 of them. If you do the arithmetic, that is roughly a year and a half of production burned in less than 2 weeks. Now, push it forward. On February 28, 2026, a much larger war begins. Iranian strikes against U.S. positions are, according to Military Watch, of much higher intensity than the June 2025 window. That means the depletion curve is steeper. That also means that by the summer of 2026, the interceptor cupboard is likely visibly bare, which is exactly what the New York Times, according to reporting summarized on July 25th, has now indirectly confirmed. Trump is not pausing because Iran ran out of drones. Trump is pausing because America is running out of the ability to shoot them down. Okay? Does that make sense? That is the analysis in 5 pieces. In one sentence, Iran took an American stealth drone in 2011, cloned it into a family of low observable weapons, and by 2026 was using those weapons and their cheaper mass cousins to destroy the single radar on which America's most advanced missile defense system depends, while simultaneously forcing America to expend its most expensive interceptors at a rate its own production line cannot sustain. That is the Sentinel paradox in operation. The stealth technology America invented has come back through the enemy's hands to blind the sensors America depends on. And the economics of the exchange favor the attacker by a factor of 100 or more. Now, I want to do something the mainstream will not do. I want to give the strongest possible argument against the analysis I have just presented, because intellectual honesty demands it. And because if a thesis cannot survive the best objection, it is not really a thesis. It is a slogan. The strongest case against the Sentinel paradox goes like this. First, the American missile defense architecture is not a single system. It is layered. That is only the upper tier designed for high-altitude ballistic interception. Below it sits Patriot PAC-3, the primary counter to drones and cruise missiles. Below that sits Aegis BMD at sea and short-range systems shared with allies. Above it sits the ground-based mid-course defense. Below all of that, coming online are directed energy weapons, lasers, and the Israeli Iron Beam concept, which essentially eliminates the cost ratio problem because photons are functionally free. The Trump administration's Golden Dome initiative, announced earlier in 2026, is precisely a response to the drone swarm problem and is being politically fast-tracked. In other words, the Sentinel paradox describes a snapshot of a system in transition, not a permanent architectural flaw. Second, the destruction of the Muwafaq Salty radar is a real event, but a one-time event. Radars can be replaced. According to reporting on the Jordan strikes, U.S. officials moved to replace the damaged radar within days. Meanwhile, American air power has systematically degraded Iranian launch infrastructure. Iran on April 2nd, 2026, saw one of its ARC-170 clones destroyed on the ground by a U.S. MQ-9 Reaper strike. A clean demonstration that whatever technological parity Iran achieved through reverse engineering, America still has the operational reach to strike it before it flies. Third, the depletion problem cuts both ways. Iran is running out too. The Shahed stockpile, the ballistic missile inventory, the precision components, all finite. Iran has been targeted for 6 months. Iranian ports are under blockade. Trump himself on July 9th per CNBC said, quote, "I say we hit them 20-1. Every time they hit us, we're going to hit them 20. If both sides are exhausting their arsenals, the side with the deeper industrial base wins." That is a serious argument. And on the surface, it is compelling. Most Pentagon spokesmen deliver some version of it from the podium. Most defense analysts write some version of it for the mainstream press. Ignoring it looks partisan. So I am not ignoring it. But here is what that argument cannot explain. If the layered defense is functioning, if the Golden Dome is coming online, if Iranian capabilities are collapsing, then there's no reason to pause offensive operations because of dwindling air defense supplies. There is a reason to accelerate. You strike now while you still hold the initiative. The fact that the White House has, per the New York Times reporting, summarized July 25th, chosen to shove broader campaign plans specifically because of stockpile concerns is not a rhetorical flourish. It is a revealed preference. Revealed preferences are the highest form of evidence in strategic analysis because they are what actors do when they think no one is watching. And what America is doing quietly is behaving as if the sentinel is still blind, as if the interceptor pile is still shallow, as if the cost math has not yet been solved, because it has not. Let me bring this all together. 15 years ago, Iran took possession of an American ARC 170 Sentinel stealth drone. Whether by electronic warfare, by malfunction, or by luck is immaterial. What matters is that Iran held the drone. From it, Iran extracted a family of low observable platforms, and alongside them, a broader industrial pathway into cheap, mass-reduced one-way attack drones, the Shahed 136 family and its cousins. In parallel, the United States built out its regional missile defense on the back of a single, indispensable radar, the ATPI-2, 1 per thigh, 5 trailers per sight, $500 million per unit, no redundant sensor, no fallback, a single point of failure, swear punked at the center of the most advanced missile defense architecture on Earth. In late February 2026, when the war broke open, Iran did not aim primarily for cities. Iran did not aim primarily for symbols. Iran aimed for the Sentinel. Within 4 days, Muwaffaq Salti's DAD radar was destroyed. Within a week, the NFPS 132 Atmal Qatar was struck. The interceptors underneath were still there. The launchers were still there, but the eyes were gone. And then came the arithmetic. Every intercept of a $30,000 drone with a $4 million Patriot missile is a defeat in slow motion. Every interceptor burned is one that cannot be replaced faster than the enemy can build another cheap drone to demand another interceptor. 96 per year of production, thousands of drones per year of Iranian output. That is not a strategy problem. That is an arithmetic problem. And nobody in Washington has yet found the arithmetic solution. That is why, as of July 24th, 2026, the president can stand at a podium and truthfully say, Iran has been badly hurt because Iran has. And simultaneously, the New York Times can report that the president has quietly shelved a broader campaign because of dwindling air defense supplies. Both are true. Neither cancels the other, because Iran is losing the visible war and America is losing the invisible one. The war of eyes, of magazines, of production lines, of the sensor that costs $500 million and can be killed by a drone that costs less than a Honda Civic. But if that were the whole picture, this video would end here. And it does not end here, because the winner of what I have just described is not in the room. The winner has not fired a single missile, has not lost a single soldier, has not spent a single dollar on interceptors, and has not been mentioned in a single press conference this week. The winner is China. Consider 3 quiet facts. Fact 1. The satellite imagery that first publicly confirmed the deployment of the U.S. Army THAAD system at MUA Salulti in mid-February 2026. The imagery that gave analysts the ability to track the radar in the days before it was destroyed was provided per Military Watch magazine by a Chinese commercial satellite company called Misr Vision. Chinese eyes documented the placement of American eyes. That is not a coincidence. That is a business model. Fact 2. On July 24th, 2026, Trump himself, per CNN, went out of his way to say, and I quote, that he does not believe China or Russia are providing weapons to Iran, citing assurances he says he received from those countries' leaders. Set aside whether you believe him. Notice what China is doing. China is not selling missiles. China does not need to. China is watching, cataloging, cost modeling exactly how many interceptors the strongest military on Earth burns to shoot down a certain number of cheap drones. That data will not be used in the Persian Gulf. That data will be used in the Taiwan Strait. Fact 3. Every American POC-3 interceptor expended over the Persian Gulf is one not available in Guam. Every ENTPI-2 radar destroyed in Jordan is one that will take years to replace. Every dollar spent maintaining the presence needed to defend Saudi and Jordanian airspace is a dollar not spent deterring the People's Liberation Army rocket force. China is not fighting this war. China is auditing it. And the audit is favorable. That is the patient giant, reading the board and collecting the winnings without firing a shot. 3 things to watch in the next 48 to 72 hours. These are falsifiable predictions. Save the video, come back and tell me if I was right or wrong. Prediction 1. The United States will extend or formalize the current pause in offensive strikes against Iran. It will be publicly framed as diplomatic space, as good faith negotiation, as goodwill toward Netanyahu ahead of his Tuesday White House visit. The actual driver will be, and will continue to be, air defense stockpile management. Watch specifically for the language measured response sequence escalation, or conditional pause. Those are the tells. Prediction 2. Chinese state-linked media, Global Times, Shinanoa English, CGTN, will run at least one analytical piece in the next 3 days on the theme of American strategic overextension in the Middle East. The pieces will be measured, professorial, and will cite Western sources such as the New York Times to give them credibility. They will not gloat. They will explain. The absence of gloating is how you will know the message is aimed at Global South elite readers, not at domestic Chinese audiences. Prediction 3. At least one Gulf state, most likely Qatar, possibly Oman, possibly Bahrain, will make a public diplomatic gesture that visibly hedges toward Beijing. Either an economic announcement, a state visit, a currency arrangement, or a public statement of neutrality. The hedging will be plausibly deniable, but the direction will be unmistakable. Your homework this week is 2 documents. Read them side by side. First, pull up the 2025 Missile Defense Agency budget justification and read the section on the ENTPI-2 radar and THAAD interceptor production rates. Just those 2 numbers, the unit cost of the radar and the annual production of the interceptor. Second, read Book 6 of Karl Clausitz's on War on the Defensive. Put them next to each other. Ask yourself whether a 19th century Prussian and a 21st century Pentagon accountant are describing the same problem. If you think I have this wrong, if you believe the layered defense hypothesis, if you think the China analysis is overstated, if you think the ARC 170 lineage argument is thin, I want to hear it. Push back in the comments, prove me wrong. I genuinely want to be challenged on this. This is my analysis. I could be wrong. The sharpest thinking in this community is often better than anything I can offer alone. Here's the question I want to leave you with. If your enemy takes your most advanced weapon, holds it in their hands, learns from it, clones it, and then uses the clone to blind the sensors your entire defense depends on, was the weapon ever really yours? Or was it, in the deeper sense, always going to belong to whoever understood it best? That is the question the RI 170 has been asking for 15 years. That is the question the MUAF Salty Radar answered on March 2nd, 2026. And that is the question China is quietly writing down. I'll see you in the next one.